Welcome to the final session before the reception. I now have the great privilege and honor of introducing the United States Secretary of Commerce, the Honorable Gina Raimondo. We're grateful to have this opportunity to welcome her back to Georgetown and look forward to engaging her insights in a conversation with Professor Ricardo Ernst. Over the course of her career, Secretary Raimondo has brought together rich experience in law, venture capital, and global business and public service. After graduating from Yale Law School, she clerked for a U.S. district judge and served as a founding employee and senior vice president for fund development at Village Ventures, a capital firm focused on the media and financial services sectors. In 2001, she returned to her home state of Rhode Island and co-founded Point Judith Capital, a venture capital firm that managed over 100 million in assets and supported more than 20 emerging businesses under her leadership. She then entered into public service as the General Treasurer of Rhode Island in 2010 and was sworn into office as the 75th Governor of Rhode Island in 2015. Her administration worked to create meaningful economic opportunities for the people of Rhode Island by focusing investments in infrastructure, education, and job training. In 2021, President Biden nominated Secretary Raimondo to serve as the United States Secretary of Commerce, which the Senate confirmed later that year in a strong vote of bipartisan support. Her work over the past 2 years has focused on creating sustainable jobs, empowering entrepreneurs to innovate and grow their businesses, and enabling American workers and businesses to compete both at home and in our global economy. Secretary Raimondo played a leading role in the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which engaged a broad range of national issues from transportation, infrastructure, to the climate crisis and environmental justice, to ensuring equitable access to broadband internet across the country. Secretary Raimondo, we are grateful for your service to our nation and for sharing your insights with us this evening in an important conversation about the future of global business and globalization. It's a pleasure to have you with us. It's now my pleasure to welcome Professor Ricardo Ernst, who will guide the discussion with Secretary Raimondo.
Yes, exactly.
Madam Secretary, welcome to Georgetown.
Wonderful
to the closing session. I mean, you are we are so excited to have you here. You are the perfect person to bring to this conference, not only for the great job you're doing, but as importantly, for the position you represent. In case the audience does not know, the Department of Commerce is a United States executive department established in 1903, 120 years ago. The department was formed to promote trade and economic stability, and global business is definitely part of it. We've been hearing a lot about the importance of nearshoring, friendshoring, and diversifying our economic ties. Who should be partnering with? Who should we be partnering with? How should business think about global investing? And what are you doing to build resilience and robust supply chains?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here, and it's great to be with everybody. It's a very interesting question. I think that all of us got religion around supply chain resiliency during COVID. At the time, I was the governor of Rhode Island, and I was spending a huge amount of time calling all over the globe, trying to get my hands on ventilators. Wow. Remember that? In the early days of the pandemic, PPE and ventilators. And I realized the hard way, they were all in Asia, specifically in China. And you realize, hold on a minute, it's the old adage, all your eggs in one basket. It makes no sense. You need a portfolio, you need resiliency, you need redundancy. And what happened in America, in search of cheap labor, we wound up finding cheaper labor, but it came with a cost, which is lack of resiliency. So I think at this point, everyone in industry and in government has realized, okay, we need some sense of a strategy. Look, not everything can be made in America. It's interesting, my boss, President Biden, I think he would like it if everything were made in America, but that isn't economic, it's not competitive, it's not a reality. So what we have to do is make what we need to make in America, like advanced semiconductors. Right now, we don't make any leading edge semiconductors in the US. We need to fix that with the CHIPS Act, but we need to work with our friends and allies around the globe in countries that have a rule of law, with good infrastructure, places we can trust, places with transparency, and look to make sure we have some resilience. One place in the world where I'm very focused is the Indo-Pacific. So I'm moving out on the Indo-Pacific economic framework, looking to do supply chain reshoring and friendshoring in places like Malaysia, Vietnam, India, the Philippines, across that region, so we can have some more, like I said, resiliency in those areas. And Mexico, I was with the Mexican delegation on Friday, high-level economic dialogue. That's another place, literally our neighbor with whom we have a massive trading relationship in our backyard. If you're a big semiconductor company and you're gonna put a new semiconductor factory or fab in, Arizona or Ohio, you'd like in Mexico to have some parts of your supply chain, components, chemicals, and the like. So anyway, I think it's an important exercise, and we have to work with other countries.
I'm very happy the way you use all this with the optimism. You use the words resilience, nearshoring, all that stuff. Thank you. We have been talking about all that all day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Madam Secretary, we've spent much of the day talking about the future of globalization, value chains, investing, and also a bit of AI, et cetera, as well. And quite a few interesting quips were made. But the discussion was largely about the US and China. You recently were in China, quite a few dialogue there, bit of dialogue there, quite a few lessons learned. What are your key takeaways for this audience? And also, a lot of them are business executives who seem to think that they have to be CEOs and diplomats at the same time. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. So a few things. First of all, I'm very happy that you're even using the word globalization, because I do worry sometimes. There have been challenges with, free trade agreements that have hurt American workers or et cetera. But we can't, in my view, throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, we live in a global world. Trade is a good thing. You mentioned China. We have a $700 billion trading relationship with China. Over $800 billion with Mexico that I was talking about earlier. Like, that is a good thing. Global trade is a good thing. And so my message in China and what we talked about is trading where we can is important. Most of what we trade with China has nothing to do with national security. And therefore, we should continue that trade. It puts people to work in the United States, creates jobs here. Having said that, we can never compromise or negotiate as it relates to national security. So an area that I'm spending a lot of time on is semiconductors. The US leads the world in advanced AI chips. China is behind us. They want some of these chips to put into their military apparatus, and we can't allow that. That is impermissible trade, period. But only 1% of our trade is subject to export controls with China. And so we need to continue to lean into that. And by the way, eyes wide open. I mean, if you're global business leaders here, if you've been doing business in China for a long time, it's harder than it's ever been. It's harder now than it's been at any time in the past 10 or 15 years, for sure. And that was my message. They want foreign direct investment. They were very clear with me about that. Bring back the foreign direct investment. No, have a level playing field. Have a rule of law. Don't raid US businesses without explanation. Tell us, well, it's true. Tell us which consumer data can we collect on Chinese consumers legally and not legally. Be clear about the law, not arbitrary about how you'll be enforcing it. In any event, I think that's the message I delivered. They said that's what direction they want to take. I said, actions speak louder than words.
So one of the things that the executives here said throughout the day was, because of these changes, they've got to be resilient, change as needed. So does that suggest a policy consistency that they can actually live with, and hence not to be, moving left and right?
We in the government need to have consistency. We need to have a strategy. I used to be in business, and I understand that. If you're in business, it's like, just tell me the rules, be clear about them, and I'll follow them. The challenge in technology is technology is changing very rapidly. And again, in the case of China, China has a civil-military fusion strategy. By design, they say everything is military. That makes it hard. Makes it very hard for us to have a fixed technology, a group of technologies that we control, because we know that there's a blending between commercial and military. Having said that, we are trying to execute on this small garden, high wall strategy. In the case of AI, I'll tell you right now, we cannot allow our most sophisticated AI chips and AI technology and AI algorithms find their way into the Chinese military. And so we're trying to move towards a place of greater clarity around what's on limits and what's off limits, updated on a regular cadence instead of, every month or two, so you can operate. But I will be the first to say, as the threat changes, the policy has to be flexible. And that's just the reality of it.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember you were here talking about the initiative for the semiconductors. You did that.
I did it right here. Yes, right here.
That's good. You mentioned the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. Can you share some insights into the pillars that commerce is working on, especially when it comes to climate?
Yes. So this Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, it's not a multilateral trade agreement. It's not CPTPP. It's a set of 4 agreements that we're looking to make as between our federal government and the federal governments of these 13 countries around a few discrete areas that matter significantly today. One is digital trade. The other is supply chains, which we've talked about. The other is good governance, which is to say having these countries sign up to tax transparency and anti-corruption. And then the final is climate. So we have a separate agreement as it relates to infrastructure and climate. And the concept is that there is, maybe even in this room, a large amount of US capital and industry that would like to invest in infrastructure and clean technology in the Indo-Pacific. And we would like to enable that. And so what we're saying to these countries is, we want to make sure you adhere to certain environmental standards, certain transparency standards, certain labor standards, certain anti-corruption standards. Because if you do, it will unlock a significant amount of American commercial investment into the region. And so we are hoping, the US is hosting the APEC meeting in November in San Francisco, the leaders meeting, and I'm hoping to have an announcement there that we are finalizing these agreements with IPEF. And then, like this, I was just talking to Joe outside, this exact program is a perfect program to have the discussion. Okay, we've signed the government-to-government agreements. How do we do more business in that region? Which is good for America, great for American national security, and good for the economies of those countries.
We'll schedule that shortly.
Yes, exactly. First, I have to get the deal done.
So, Madam Secretary, we have many great programs in this school. One of them is the Global Business Fellows, which is one that Joe Baratta has also endowed. And in the interest of time, I think you have short time, we asked the students to actually come up with a bunch of questions. They come up with many, but we have one that we thought we'll ask you. Wesley's son, if you're here. There he is. Please come on. We asked you the most difficult question that's coming.
I have no doubt.
Thank you so much for joining us and for your remarks, Madam Secretary. My name is Wesley Sun. I'm a student in the McDonough School of Business. And my question today is about exports, and that is, what kind of export supports have been provided to underserved communities? And is there any discernible patterns in the data regarding the most effective ways for helping these businesses engage in exporting?
Great question. Thank you for it. So it's very interesting. We know that companies which export grow faster and are more profitable and create more jobs. We also know that it's the biggest companies that engage the most in exporting, because think about yourself. If you start a business, which country should I export to? What's the paperwork involved? How do I do it? How do I finance any export activity? And so I've actually made it a priority of mine to create initiatives to help small businesses export. So for example, we have a rural export office that helps small companies in rural America to learn how to export, to figure out which products in which countries and how to do it. Because often, if you're in a rural area, you might not know that. Another thing we have is I partnered with this program called Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses. They have 10,000 small businesses that they work with. We are working with them to provide our export promotion technical assistance to those companies. And this I'm super excited about. If you think about it, I've met with a lot of these small companies. If you're a baker, you love baking, you open a baking business, you're successful. I talked to one guy, he made aquariums, he started the company, massively successful. They start these businesses because they're great at that thing. Health and beauty aids. A lot of small health and beauty aid companies, they start the businesses because they have, they're great at creating health and beauty aids. They don't really know how to export. So we've set up this special initiative to provide technical help to small businesses that are well-run and fast-growing. And it's really just a matter of kind of helping them get their strategy together and using our tools at the Commerce Department to access the markets that they want to go to. I actually started a special initiative for helping small companies export health and beauty aids to China. Why did I do that? Because I'm trying to make the point, there's plenty of business to be done with China that doesn't impact national security. Who could say that cosmetics and makeup, affect national security? These are small businesses who could, increase their revenue by 50% if they could access the Chinese market. So in any event, you ask a good question, you hit a nerve with me, because I'd like to help little companies, rural-based companies, women-owned small businesses, to figure out how to export so they can be successful, more profitable, and hire more people.
Well, thank you very much. Please join me in thanking the Secretary. Please feel free to use our platform for whatever you need.
I'll be back.
Exactly. Be back.